Hey, welcome back! Today we're looking at Two Gentlemen of Verona by Shakespeare. This isn't anyone's favorite play because the ending is very confusing and hard to deal with. And a big part of that stems from the fact that the ideas in the play are very much a part of Shakespeare's time and not so much of ours. The play is about love, the romantic love between a man and a woman, and also the love between two friends, and the tension between those kinds of loves. Today, a lot of our understanding of friendship is much shallower and less enthusiastic than friendships of Shakespeare's day. In fact, there was a lot written about friendship in Shakespeare's day and what it meant. That intimate and unbreakable bond between two friends is something that's harder for us to think about these days. In the world where a lot of our friends are people we barely know on social media, this kind of friendship seems foreign and strange. But throughout the play, the two friends, Valentine and Proteus, talk about each other as if the other person were their other self. Valentine, talking about Proteus, talks about how he's known him from his childhood and this is like himself. He loves him as he loves his own self, which is something that can also be said sometimes for romantic love. In fact, Shakespeare goes out of his way to confuse the two loves here. This cross-tension between two kinds of love is complicated by a lot of the symbolism running through this whole play. There's a lot of exchange of letters, or people reading letters, or hiding letters, or saying letters are from other people, and we find throughout each of these letters seems to reflect that confusion between two kinds of love. Proteus has a letter from Julia, the woman he loves, but when his father asks him who it's from, he says it's from Valentine. He's hiding the fact that he's in love with Julia. But in some ways, he's transposing the two loves. Later on, Sylvia asks Valentine to write a letter for her, for someone she loves. And so he writes some poetry for her to give to a loved one, and she gives it back to him. At first it seems like she just doesn't like it well enough and wants him to redo it, and though Valentine's a little slow on the uptake, his servant Speed figures out pretty quickly that what she's done is had him write love poetry for himself. Loving the self, loving the other as the self, all of that is conflated. And it all culminates in a really intensely painful ending. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the ending right now, which is obviously a spoiler, but it's the most important and pivotal part of the whole play. If you don't want to know about the ending, just skip ahead a little bit and I'll get to my summary. Okay, at the end of the play we have this horrifying moment when Proteus, who has betrayed his girl by falling in love with he's betrayed Valentine by snitching on him and also trying to steal his girl, and he's betrayed himself by breaking every vow he ever had. He pursues Sylvia, Valentine's girlfriend, into the woods and tries to force her to love him, to the point that it looks like he is about to rape her. At that moment, Valentine steps out of the shadows and stops him, finally seeing Proteus for who he truly is. And he says, "I will never trust you again. In fact, you've sort of violated my trust in anyone at this point." Proteus gives him 4.5 lines of apology saying, "Oh, I deeply regret what I've just done." And Valentine immediately forgives him. And not only immediately forgives him, but then says because Proteus is his true friend, and because he truly loves him, then he gives him Sylvia, which is mind-blowingly outrageous. And all of us go, what? In some ways, this is a moment where friendship love champions over romantic love, in a really horrifying and creepy way. Because Valentine is such a good friend to Proteus, that he loves him so much that he will forgive him the worst possible fault, which is true loving friendship. And also, because he loves him so much, he loves him as himself, that he will put Proteus in his own place, and allow Proteus to have the girl that he truly loves. Which sounds all nice in math, but it's horrifying in real life. What about, say, Sylvias Feelings in any of this? Well, we don't even get those. More on that in a moment. From the beginning, we've staged Valentine and Proteus as two different approaches to love. Valentine is supposed to be the pure love. After all, Saint Valentine was known for representing the idea of love. Proteus, on the other hand, is the idea of changefulness, inconsistency. And in fact, Proteus violates every love that he has. He is incredibly inconsistent through and through throughout this play. And so when Valentine has that final moment where he shows that true friendship to Proteus, it's kind of a championing of friendship love. Are we supposed to appreciate this at the end? It's hard to say. As with most of Shakespeare's complicated plays and comedies, it seems like Shakespeare poses a very complicated problem for us and then sits back and raises his eyebrow, saying, "What you gonna do with it now?" It's not just that I have clear problems with everything that happens in that last scene, from a modern mentality. It's also that Shakespeare opens up a few problems himself, specifically in what Sylvia does in response. All throughout this play, Valentine and Sylvia have been true to each other, and they've loved each other. And here at the end, when Proteus is about to rape Sylvia, Sylvia cries out, and that's the last line she gets in the play. She doesn't speak again through Proteus's apology. She doesn't speak again through Valentine's forgiveness of the man who's about to rape her. She doesn't speak again when Valentine hands her over. And then when all is sort of neatly tied up, because this is supposed to be a comedy, she doesn't get a word to say, "Oh yay, now I get to have Valentine." She doesn't say anything. Her voice is in fact cut off. As is finally Julia's as well, the woman who's supposed to be paired up with Proteus. With both women silenced at the end, and particularly Sylvia's being silenced in the moment of potential rape, there's a mirror to older stories. The story of Philomel, which is one that's echoed a lot in Titus Andronicus, another early play of Shakespeare's. Are we supposed to be content and happy with this moment? Considering how painfully we watch Sylvia silenced, I think there's supposed to be some discomfort in this moment. Even if we're like, yay, friendship, there's still a dreadful blow being dealt. And no clear explanation of how we're supposed to take it. In some ways, it seems that Shakespeare is exaggerating some of the ideas about friendship that were being spoken in his day. Maybe drawing the problem to a very uncomfortable conclusion, and seeing what we do with it. There's also the fun aspect of the servants throughout this piece. There's Speed, who is probably the cleverest character in the entire play, who runs lots of witty word games by everyone that he encounters. There's also Lance, who is a phenomenal moron, and has a strong relationship with his dog. The comic interplay between Lance and his dog, Crab, is fantastic in this play, because the relationship between Lance and Crab mirrors everything going on between all the other characters. Lance comments about the silent parting of Crab, how Crab didn't cry when they left home. Has this funny mirror to the silence of Julia as Proteus leaves. And there is several instances where Lance tries to take his dog's role, or confuses his dog with himself in a role-play game, each time mirroring that aspect of the characters talking about other people as their true selves. And Speed, the quick witty one, is often the messenger with the letters. And he's constantly seeing the letters as a kind of currency going back and forth. That all these awkward love interplays are kind of an economic transaction. The surprising ending with the sort of championing of friendship love reminds me in a weird way of the movie Frozen, where we realize suddenly at the end that true love doesn't have to be romantic. There's other kinds of love, like sisterly love. In this case, the effect is pretty dark, though. Characters also remind me a whole lot of Romeo and Juliet. They're quick to fall in love, they're quick with their passions, and also highly inconsistent, just like our jerk Romeo. Okay, let's look at a quick summary. So Valentine is about to leave for Milan to grow up and be a man, and Proteus is saying goodbye to him. Proteus is not going out to see the world because he's in love with Julia, and he wants to stay close and home near her. Meanwhile, Julia is perusing all these guys who are pursuing her, and she realizes that she's deeply in love with Proteus. In a sort of, again, innocent, almost Juliet kind of way, she plays around with his love letter, pretending not to like it and tearing it up in front of Lucetta, but then as soon as Lucetta walks away, she picks up the pieces and begins kissing them. And it looks like things are going to work out great for Julia and Proteus until Proteus's father tells him that he does need to go out and see the world. What's he doing loafing around here? He needs to go out and learn to be a gentleman. After all, there's sort of the education of a gentleman in this. The title, Two Gentlemen of Verona, is about building a gentleman. What does it mean to become a gentleman? And so his dad, seeing that he's got a letter from Valentine, tells him, it's time you go out and join Valentine out there. Proteus is actually upset because he wants to stay with Julia, but there's nothing for it. Act 2, Valentine and Speed are talking about how Valentine is now in love with Sylvia. Sylvia shows up and does this funny little interchange where she tricks Valentine into writing himself a love letter, though it takes Speed to explain it to him. Meanwhile, back at home, Proteus and Julia are saying goodbye to each other, and they exchange rings and pledges and swear to be true to each other forever, which Proteus manages to keep for like a scene. Lance is also grieving and talking to his dog as they head out. Valentine and Sylvia are talking back and forth, and they're talking about Proteus and what a wonderful guy Proteus is. Valentine's talking his friend up so much to Sylvia that she wishes she could meet him. And oh, it just so happens that in comes Proteus. Sylvia is actually the daughter of a duke at whose estate Valentine is staying, and the duke doesn't know that Valentine is in love with his daughter. In fact, he intends Sylvia to marry a young man named Sir Thurio, who's kind of a loser. As soon as Proteus steps in, he sees Sylvia, and Valentine says, "This is Sylvia. Sylvia's so amazing." And Proteus falls for him himself. Whether he falls for her because he likes the way she looks, or whether he falls for her because Valentine is in love with her, and Valentine is his other self, is weirdly confusing. But everyone, the Duke, Sylvia, and everyone else, greet Proteus as a wonderful person because of all the wonderful things that Valentine has said about him. Lance and Speed catch up and talk about how their masters are doing in their love games, and then Proteus has this aside where he decides that he's going to mess up Valentine's life. Valentine was about to sneak up to Sylvia's window and help her escape so that they could elope because her dad, the Duke, keeps her under lock and key. And together they'll get married and be happy ever after. And Proteus decides to snitch on him because, one, he's a jerk, and two, he wants Sylvia. And he's got to get Valentine out of the way in order to get her. "To leave my Julia, shall I be forsworn? To love fair Sylvia, shall I be forsworn? To wrong my friend, I shall be much forsworn. And even that power which gave me first my oath provokes me to this threefold perjury. Love bade me swear, and love bids me forswear." I'm gonna mess everything up for everybody. And Proteus, the ever-changeful. Meanwhile, back in Verona, Julia decides she can't stand being away from Proteus any longer, so she decides to dress like a man and come after him. Act 3, which is where the big turning points usually happen in Shakespeare's play, begins with Proteus snitching on Valentine. The Duke promises not to include Proteus's name in his unveiling of Valentine's plot. The Duke tricks Valentine into accidentally revealing the rope ladder he was going to use to help Sylvia escape. And he banishes Valentine for ungentlemanly behavior of trying to steal away his daughter. Is Valentine still a gentleman? Proteus goes up to Valentine and says, "Oh, it'll be okay, I'm so sorry, but you can send me letters and I'll give them to Sylvia for you." Yeah, right. Again, love letters and that weird I'm in place of you kind of thing going on. Sylvia is very angry with her father for banishing the man she loves, and Proteus kind of buddies up to the Duke and says, "Well, I'll help you out. I'll go say mean things about Valentine so that Sylvia won't love him anymore, and I'll say nice things about Sir Thurio, who you want to marry Sylvia. We'll play some love music and stuff, and it will completely change Sylvia's mind." Act 4 begins with Valentine and Speed being captured by outlaws, but when they learn what an educated and intelligent young man he is, they decide to make him the leader of their outlaw band. After all, it turns out that they're all gentlemen as well, who have gotten in trouble for little things here and there. Julia shows up in Milan to find Proteus, and there she finds him, except that he's singing love songs to Sylvia. What? Sylvia says, "I hate your guts. How dare you step in here and try to steal your best friend's girl?" And Proteus is like, "But I love you." And Julia's like, "You jerk!" But she doesn't say anything to him. Sylvia, meanwhile, decides to plot to escape and find Valentine, and so she gets the help of a Sir Aglamore, a knight who has lost his love and knows what love means. They're gonna run away together and find Valentine, leaving jerk Thurio and Proteus behind. Meanwhile, Lance has unsuccessfully tried to give his dog to Sylvia because he thinks that's what his master wants, because he's kind of dumb. And so Proteus decides he can't use Lance anymore, and he decides, hey, this young page boy named Julia, actually she's going by Sebastian now, would be a great person to carry my mail to Sylvia. So he gets his old girlfriend to try to carry his letters to his new girlfriend, including the ring that Julia gave him. Jerk! Sylvia, of course, says, "No thank you, I don't want any of this," but she does give the picture that Proteus asked for. Act 5. Sylvia and Sir Aglamore sneak off and run away. When the Duke finds out, he gets Proteus and Thurio to chase after and try to find them. On their journey, Sir Aglamore and Sylvia get attacked by outlaws, and Sylvia gets captured while Sir Aglamore runs away. Turns out he's a jerk too, I guess. The play culminates with Proteus's off-stage attempt to rescue Sylvia from the outlaws, but they both come in to the outlaw camp where Valentine overhears them. And Valentine sees Proteus with Julia at his side, trying to persuade Sylvia one more time. And when she refuses, he attempts to rape her, much to the horror of everyone, including the audience. Valentine jumps in and shows Proteus all of his faults and says, "Look what you've done to me, how you've betrayed me. I'll never trust you again. Now I dare not say that I have one friend alive, thou wouldst disprove me. Who should be trusted when one's right hand is perjured to the bosom? Proteus, I am sorry I must never trust thee more, but count the world a stranger for thy sake. The private wound is deepest. O time most accursed, amongst all foes that a friend should be the worst." And Proteus, like I said, gives a 4-line apology. "My shame and guilt confounds me. Forgive me, Valentine. If hearty sorrow be sufficient ransom for offence, I tender it here. I do as truly suffer as ere I did commit. My pain is as deep as my wrong." And Valentine says, "It's all right. Then I am paid, and once again I do receive the honest, who by repentance is not satisfied, is nor of heaven nor earth, for these are pleased. By penitence the Eternal's wrath appeased, and that my love may appear plain and free, all that was mine in Sylvia I give thee." And so he hands Sylvia over to Proteus. Sylvia, meanwhile, says no more lines. And so Valentine has restored his gentlemanliness by showing his magnanimity in his forgiveness of Proteus, at least from an intellectual standpoint. He's returned as a gentleman. But then Julia exposes herself and shows the ring that Proteus gave her, and he realizes, hey, actually, looking at the two of you side by side, Julia, you are the hotter one. I'll take you. And the Duke rushes in and sees all of this and immediately forgives Valentine. And Valentine also asks for the restoration of all these outlaws, who used to be gentlemen before they became thugs and thieves and killers. And so Valentine manages to restore the gentlemanliness of all those around him. Proteus's gentlemanhood, as well as all the outlaws. But of course this is, again, a transaction between these big male figures right here, as the women are shoved to the side and crushed down and silenced. It is a heartbreaking end. In some ways, I find this play more tragic than Romeo and Juliet. So that's the end of Two Gentlemen of Verona. I know I skipped Richard III and Julius Caesar. They're wonderful plays. I read them, but I didn't get a chance to do videos of them because of the wild, crazy world we live in and the coronavirus. I will get back, and I will get them up, and I'll put them up soon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.